All right, hold on. Mm. Get a little sip of that old Sasquatch coffee. There we are. Anyways, I want to say thank you so very much for my good friend Gunner out there at the squatchcoffee.com or the Sasquatch Coffee Company. Just awesome stuff out there, buddy. Love it. Another little shout I want to give out to Cat at I know I'm horrible at this. Anyways, want to give a shout out to Kat. Thank you so very much for the necklace, the Bigfoot necklace, and the keychain, and all that stuff that you made. Kat has some handmade stuff, and she's a resident of a pretty big foodie place out there in Cave Junction, Oregon. I used to go through all the time heading out to Brookings and going down to the Redwood Forest, and it was really really cool out there. So she has actually a site. It's called it's on Etsy. You guys, a lot of you guys know Etsy, ETSY. You can go over there and check out and search on there, Cat Man Do Studio, Cat Man Do Studio. And I'm telling you what, you're gonna find some awesome Bigfoot jewelry and trinkets of all kinds over there. So it's really awesome. And she got some other great stuff too. So there you go. Wanted to give a little shout out to Ethan. Happy birthday, young man, out there in Newport, Oregon, where we're both from. And I want to say happy birthday to you, young man. And looking forward to hearing more from you as you grow older with a lot of your Bigfoot research that you like to do. So awesome. And tell your parents hi for me. Um, Other than that, not much going on. At the end of this month, I am going to have that resources page out with a lot of links to a lot of different cool places online, not to mention a lot of reading material for those of you who are junkies for encounter stories or junkies for also for the research side of things. I'm going to have that as well. And check this out. I'm going to mute myself right now. And now I am back, and guess what? You didn't hear that ugly pop that used to happen with the old headset. So, but am I gonna like fade out that whole clearing of my voice? No, not even close. I just want to let you know it's there. So with that, oh, and don't forget, next week I will introduce the winner for this month's PacWest Bigfoot awesomeness. So let's get on to this week's PacWest Bigfoot encounter story. Bigfoot harass property owners near Crescent City, California. It smashed in a window with a rock one night, and that was it. We decided we had had enough, and we sold it. The property, the dream, as well as the Bigfoot that apparently came appurtenant with that property outside Crescent City. You'd think this stuff only happens out in remote areas where those that live off the grid or are on some months long hike get harassed and scared off by a creature or animal like Bigfoot. But no, it can happen on the outskirts of small town America too. Here's how we were harassed so badly that we sold the property not long after buying it in Northern California. Bigfoot the harasser. No, we did not take the iconic bath when we sold the property off just a short time after buying it. As a matter of fact, we made a little. Eventually, however, we bought something else, and not on the fringes of town or a city, but right inside. It was a Bigfoot. We know this for sure because we saw it in its creepy grin. And just to give you the why we were there and what the area was like, let me tell you a bit about our move to Crescent City, California, and our reason for leaving. We, like many of our friends, were soon retiring. We'd been in the Bay Area for nearly 4 decades working for the school district. My husband and I were not teachers. I was a custodian, and he was part of the maintenance services crew. It is how we met. We married, had two wonderful children, daughters who are married now and live back east today. They wanted us to come out there after we retired, but Luke, my husband, and I had other plans. We love the northern coastline of Northern California and Southern Oregon. And while we love the Brookings area, we settled on staying in California at the time just inside the city limits, barely, of Crescent City, California. We found some property just out of town that was literally somewhere between the fort up north and just north of town off Highway 101. We wanted forest views and a picnic on the beach when the weather allowed us to head on over and drive on over and have that picnic. My husband and I were in love with the Pacific Northwest, even after the experience we had. Anyways, we found some property and hired some friends, building company, to build us a perfect little home we've saved to have built. Well, we also sold the house we bought 30 years before and used that. So yes, it was like a savings account for us. Retirement was 2 years away, basically. Plenty of time to get the house built. Until then, we'd go up and visit on the weekends here and there and stay in the travel trailer. That was the plan, though, and we never thought they'd change because of a Bigfoot. I never believed in them until that moment in my life. And I'll say my piece real quick about them. They are not furry, friendly forest things. They are wild, protective, and can be very menacing. Was I afraid for my life? Well, to be honest, no. But I'm also sure this thing could have, and at any moment, taken our lives if it had wanted to. There were a couple of moments when I thought it would, but in the end, it did do its job in just getting us to leave in a hurry, that's for sure. The new neighbor. It started almost immediately when we first started visiting the property. We'd come up about 3 months after purchasing it, and we got a great deal for the land. And I figured out why later. But we got a great deal nonetheless, and decided to head out that last spring in the Bay Area when I retired. My husband already had about 4 months before me. We pulled the travel trailer we had purchased with a bit of extra money left over from the sale of the old house, and using the rest to build the new home at the edge of the woods, and sock away the rest in our savings. We'd done well and weathered many financial storms to afford a comfortable retirement. We were ready for the rest of our lives to begin. We ended up at the property one late afternoon, just enough time to get the trailer undone and hooked up to the hookups we requested from our friend the builder. The foundation was already laid, and it looked like some other materials were on site at that point. We ate, tuned into our books, coffee, and settled down for that first evening. We were not much for television other than some soccer or baseball games and cooking shows from time to time. We had turned in that night around 11 p.m. or so. Anyways, Luke was asleep when I swear I heard something outside the trailer, like footsteps or something. Either way, it sounded rather large or heavy. I woke Luke immediately, and he heard it too. He believed it was a person and jumped out of the bed and decided to check it out and shoo off whomever it was. He was out the door before I could tell him to take the handgun. The one we did not bring with us, we would soon learn. He heard someone running off towards the back of the property, which led to the forest. He came back in after a minute or so, and we decided it was just someone lurking about, possibly wanting to see if there were any tools on site to take and sell. I was not all that sure about his assumptions, but I did not make any argument about it. Luke was a pretty intuitive person. It was one of the things I loved about him. Nothing happened the rest of that visit, but upon our next visit, we'd get the scare of our life, period. Shake, rattle, and roll. It was late summer, the summer before we'd retire. The house was beginning to take shape finally, and we were able to move in within just a couple of months if we wanted to. Of course, we had a year left till our retirement, so our dream home would have to wait. This time, however, we'd take some more of that saved up vacation time and do some painting on the inside. Well, in what rooms we could. It was a smaller 3-bedroom home. That was perfect for the two of us and grandchildren and family that would come to visit from time to time. It was pretty spacious inside. Our investment gave us a ton of equity right out of the gate, as we had used, like I said, much of what we had made off the old home we sold. So selling it sooner than later was not an issue as much as it was just saddening. But we had come back to do some work ourselves and started bringing the little things along with us to store in the garage. It was about the third day there, I remember, when we noticed something rather odd that morning around the outside of the house. footprints, bare ones. It was warm out for the northern coastal area, but still, you don't expect someone to run around your property barefoot, especially with construction happening. What was what was most odd was the sheer size of the prints. My husband looked at the one that was most clearly visible in the damp dirt next to the house. Most were impressions at best, but this one was unmistakably a footprint for sure. It was 16 1/4 inch long and wide as all get out. There were toe impressions, you could tell, and the fact that it seemed to be that big made my husband start to become very, very curious. As for myself, I was, well, a little frightened by the size of them. 2 nights later, we'd both be frightened, almost to death, we thought. That night, I know for sure it was a Thursday, as we were heading back home Saturday so we could get one day of rest before going back to work. We had turned in for the night in the travel trailer. It was about 10:30 p.m. when I felt something bump the trailer right behind my head. I was startled and woke Luke up immediately again. He sat up a bit, and that is when what we thought was an earthquake started. The whole trailer started shifting back and forth rather violently. It sounded like it was going to tear apart at the seams, we thought. I also thought an earthquake and said it out loud. Luke replied instantly in a loud voice, "That's not an earthquake!" He fell against the wall twice before he could get to the front door. This time we'd brought our handgun along with us. As he opened the door, the trailer stopped rocking and rolling back and forth. He never let off a shot, but when he came back inside not 30 seconds later, his face was white as a ghost and he turned off all the lights inside. A monster lives here. The next morning over breakfast, after almost no sleep, Luke told me what he saw. He said it was a monster of a thing, ugly, hairy, and looked like it wanted to kill him. He said the word Bigfoot. It was all he could compare the thing to. There was nothing else he could think of. After that moment or incident, life in our perfect little pre-retirement world had become, well, scary and crazy. We went back home to the Bay Area, and I went back to work. We kept everything to ourselves at first. Basically, actually, up until letting you do this. We kept it quiet. We just wanted to get on with our lives, that's all. But retirement had come and the house was ready. We had paid to have movers take everything up and unload it. All that was left was to unpack it. Life was good for about 3 months, then it just got crazy. We hoped for the best, but we got the worst. My husband still heard things in the night since we moved in, like, for instance, howling from the forest late at night. And once he heard something with really heavy footsteps running through the backyard. I'd not heard a thing, but then again, I'm a very heavy sleeper. For the most part, at least. One evening, though, I heard something that had me shivering with fright. It sounded like fingernails being dragged across the outside of the house. It started near the window in the bedroom and kept going past it. As whatever it was passed the window, I could see a large shadow, a figure like of a person. Only the head was above the window, and so shoulders and chest were all I could make out as it passed by. My husband heard it too and headed out of the living room area to look out the bigger window. I followed. We watched as a large male Bigfoot walked right out underneath the only light on the property, a street light that sat next to the driveway. It was the scariest thing I'd ever witnessed in my life. And I was mugged in the city once. It was huge. My husband was guessing about 8-9 feet tall, pitch black, the hair that is, and in the light we could see the thing very well. Its hair was long. Well, it was long enough to be flowing. You could see it flowing, so it had to be at least 2 to 3 inches long, it seemed. Its face was dark, complected as well, but we could make out a heavy brow, with sunken dark eyes and big teeth as it flipped its lip up at us and grinned. Its upper body was turned towards us as it whipped its hand in the air. It seemed like it was trying to shoo us off, I suppose. At least that's what it felt like to me. Its arms were massive. This thing was a lot like That old film taken here near here back in the 60s, I suppose. However, this one seemed a little skinnier, a more V shape to it, like a muscle builder guy at a gym or something. Either way, it was massive, scary, and gave us a look like it was not happy we were there at all. That grin wasn't really a grin. My heart sank after it walked off into the dark. A monster lived here. A monster was the reason for all this craziness on our new property, our new home. Rocks through the window. I asked the real estate agent about the property the very next day. I did not get a very straight answer. Then again, I am not sure if she knew or if she thought I was nuts asking about Bigfoot on the property. Personally, I don't think she knew a thing. We sat at breakfast the next day discussing what we could do. We had a great nest egg. Even after building the place, we still had much of that, plus our savings, plus our pensions. We could build a fence. So we did. And we wrapped one electrical wire around the top of it. We thought that ought to do it, at least for the yard, but a few months later we'd learn it was not even close. We had our grandkids and kids visit not a month later. The conversation did come up. And just to let you know, our son-in-law, well, the one that was from Northern California originally, was interested in our experience. He had seen something once, he said, when out traveling between Sacramento and Reno along Highway 80. He was not sure what it was, but it was big, tall, dark, and crossed the freeway or highway there in about 3 fast and awkward-looking steps. So that you know, this is a 4-lane highway out that way. He said Bigfoot, so did we. They stayed for a week, and once in the middle of the night our son-in-law swore he had heard howling, but that was about it of anything happening while they were there. It was a few weeks after that that they left that we did too. No, we were not going on vacation. We were simply getting the heck out of Dodge. I heard it. First, something was dragging a stick or something across the outside wall one night. Maybe a long fingernail is what crossed my mind. I woke Luke up again immediately. It stopped, the scraping or dragging sound, but it was replaced by some high-pitched, hyena-like laughing sound right outside in the backyard. It seriously almost stopped my heart. It was so loud and scary sounding. Luke seemed to have had enough at that point and jumped out of bed, grabbed his robe in a complete cliche fashion and the gun. Before he could even get down the hallway to the living room and out the back sliding glass door, there was a loud It was the sound of the sliding glass door shattering and the rolling of a large rock on the kitchen floor. I screamed and Luke practically dove onto the floor, aiming his gun out the back. The screaming continued but was moving off into the forest behind us. Cool hand Luke. My husband spent most of the morning cleaning up. He was both angry and a bit scared at what happened. No, not scared for himself, but for me and my safety. A few weeks later, we'd have the clawing sound again on one side of the house, and something was smacking it until we turned on the porch light. At that moment, the Bigfoot ran off, and I could see once again that it was a Bigfoot. It was still a Bigfoot. We couldn't believe it. They're fast. Really, really fast, by the way. Soon enough, the slapping would happen on a couple of windows in the middle of the evening, and once while we were watching television out in the living room. I thought we were going to have to clean up the broken glass again, but thank goodness it did not break it when it hit it. I was getting to the point of being simply harassed, I guess you could call it. I just felt harassed. We never felt in danger physically of them, even when we'd sometimes return at night after church or whatever and had to walk from the car to the front door. We knew they were around. Once we pulled in, I'd seen a tall, dark figure walk into the backyard. I got out and unlocked the door as my husband followed close behind me, looking everywhere like a soldier on a battlefield. Suffice it to say, we'd had enough. A few weeks later, and we put the new home up for sale. Not even 2 years we were there. As I said, we had some good equity in it, so selling it and making some money made it easier for us emotionally. I did not care if we were to take a bath over the whole thing, though. I hated the feeling of being watched and harassed by something so massive and scary. We sold it 3 months later and decided that Brookings would be nicer. It was, and much cheaper, too. Either way, we left Crescent City. Today I still live in the town of Brookings. Luke has since passed away. I am selling the home here soon. One of my daughters ended up divorced and remarried since then and lives in Eugene, Oregon, where I will relocate shortly. I'll never forget the fear of living with Bigfoot on that property. And even though everyone in the family thinks we are a bit crazy, other than my son-in-law, I know they exist. And I know they can be truly menacing if you encroach on their property, because that is what I believe Luke and I had done. But that was our story. Thanks, Belinda.